I've always found comfort in the grooves of old vinyl records, the way the needle dances along the tracks, pulling out stories and emotions from decades past. It's a quiet passion, one that fits well with my life as Nathan, a 35-year-old graphic designer, living in a sunlit apartment in Portland. My days are filled with the hum of my computer, the soft click of my mouse, and the occasional laughter from the street below. Maria, my wife, is the vibrant counterpoint to my quiet existence. At 32, she's a teacher, her energy boundless, her smile infectious. She's the light in our home, her laughter echoing through our cozy space, her passion for education and children brightening every corner. We've been married for 7 years, a time filled with trust, laughter, and dreams of expanding our little family. But here's the thing about dreams. They can be deceptive, hiding truths beneath their surface. It was during one of those quiet evenings, the kind where the city's noise fades into a distant murmur, that I found myself alone with my thoughts. Maria was out, attending a teacher's conference, leaving me with the silence and my records. As I placed a needle on a Billie Holiday LP, her voice filled the room, singing about love and loss, and something within me stirred. You see, there's a part of me, a part I've kept locked away, a secret I've never shared, not even with Maria. It's not about another woman or a hidden addiction, but something more intimate, more personal. I've always known I was different, not in the way society often labels, but in a way that felt like a quiet rebellion against the norms. My secret isn't about who I love, but how I love. There's an intensity, a depth to my desires that I've never fully explored, not even with Maria. It's not that I've been dishonest with her. I've just never found the words, or perhaps the courage, to voice this part of me. It's a part that craves more than the gentle intimacy we share, a part that yearns for something spicier, something that would make even the most liberal blush. And as Billie's voice sang of love's complexities, I realized this secret was about to change everything. Not because I wanted it to, but because secrets, like the music on these records, have a way of playing themselves out, whether you're ready or not. The needle continued its journey, the music a soft backdrop to my thoughts, and I knew, deep down, that the quiet life I cherished was about to get a lot more complicated. It started innocently enough. A new client, Nicholas, walked into my office. He was in his late 20s, with an easy smile and an air of confidence that was both disarming and intriguing. He was an entrepreneur, looking to revamp his brand's image. Over the weeks, our professional relationship grew into a friendship. We shared lunches, talked about everything from business to personal philosophies, and I found myself looking forward to our meetings more than I should have. Nicholas had a way of making everything seem exciting. His ideas for his brand were bold, pushing boundaries in ways that made me feel alive, much like the music from my records. His vision was to create something that wasn't just seen, but felt, an experience rather than just a product. As we worked together, I found myself drawn not just to his business acumen, but to the way he lived his life with such fervor, a stark contrast to the quiet, controlled existence I led with Maria. Maria was busy with her school's annual play, often coming home late, exhausted but fulfilled. Our time together was precious, yet I felt a growing distance, an unspoken tension that I couldn't quite place. She would talk about her day, the children, the play, but there was a part of me that felt like I was drifting, caught between the life I knew and the life I was beginning to explore with Nicholas. As our friendship deepened, Nicholas and I started to venture beyond the professional. We'd meet for drinks after work, and the conversations would shift from business to more personal territories. He shared stories of his travels, his adventures, and the wild parties he'd throw, where the boundaries of intimacy were as fluid as the drinks. These stories, filled with laughter and a hint of danger, stirred something in me, a longing for experiences that were more uninhibited, more daring than the life I shared with Maria. One evening, after a particularly engaging session at a local bar, Nicholas invited me to one of his exclusive events. "It's not just a party, Nathan," he said with that infectious grin. "It's an exploration of desires, a celebration of freedom." The invitation was like a whisper of temptation, a siren call to parts of me I had always kept under wraps. I hesitated, thinking of Maria, of our quiet evenings, the gentle intimacy we shared. But the allure of something different, something that promised to fill the void I hadn't even acknowledged, was too strong. I agreed, feeling the thrill of stepping into the unknown, a world where the rules were different, where my secret desires might not just be accepted but celebrated. As I prepared for the event, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and guilt. Maria was at another rehearsal, and I was about to step into a night that could change everything. The anticipation was electric, like the crackle before a storm. I knew this was more than just a party. It was a gateway to a part of myself I had always kept hidden, a part that craved the kind of connection that was raw, intense, and one evening, after a particularly long day, Nicholas invited me for drinks to celebrate the completion of our project. The bar was dimly lit, the atmosphere charged with the buzz of late-night conversations. As the night wore on, and the alcohol flowed, our conversation took a turn towards the personal. Nicholas shared his own experiences with relationships. His openness about his sexuality was both surprising and enlightening. He spoke of his journey, the struggles, and the liberation that came with embracing who he truly was. His stories were filled with a mix of pain and joy, a tapestry of human connection that resonated deeply within me. As he spoke, I felt an unexpected kinship, a shared understanding that went beyond our professional bond. In a moment of vulnerability, I confessed my own confusion, my feelings that I had never explored or even admitted to myself. I've always felt there was something more, something different about how I connect with people, I admitted, my voice barely above the soft jazz playing in the background. Nicholas listened, his eyes filled with understanding. "It's okay to feel that way, Nathan. It's okay to explore who you are," he said, his voice gentle, encouraging. The night ended with us in his apartment, the line between friendship and something more blurred by the alcohol and the emotional intensity of our confessions. The next morning, the reality of what had happened hit me like a cold wave. I had crossed a line, not just with Nicholas, but with Maria. Guilt consumed me, yet there was an undeniable truth in what had occurred. I was attracted to men, and I had acted on it. The morning light was harsh, unforgiving as I sat on the edge of Nicholas's bed, my head pounding from the night before. I looked at him, still asleep, his features softened by the morning glow. The intimacy of the night before, the closeness we shared, now felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the stark reality of my actions. I slipped out of the apartment, my heart heavy with a mix of regret and a strange sense of liberation. The walk back to my own apartment was a blur, my thoughts a tangled mess of what-ifs and should-haves. When I entered our home, Maria was already up, her face lighting up with a smile that quickly faded as she saw my expression. "Nathan, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I couldn't meet her eyes. I need to tell you something," I started, my voice shaky. I explained the night, the party, my feelings for Nicholas, and the line I had crossed. Her face went through a spectrum of emotions: shock, hurt, confusion, and finally, a quiet resolve. "We need to talk about this, Nathan. Really talk," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor I knew was there. Over the next few days, we did just that. We talked about our marriage, our dreams, and the unspoken desires that had been brewing beneath the surface. Maria listened, her pain evident, but her willingness to understand even more so. "I love you, Nathan, but I need to know if you can be truly happy with me, or if there's a part of you that needs something else," she said, her eyes searching mine for an answer I wasn't sure I had. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself at a crossroads. Nicholas and I continued to meet, but now our interactions were tinged with a new complexity. He was patient, giving me space to figure out what I truly wanted. I realized that my feelings for Nicholas were not just about exploring a new side of myself. They were about understanding the depth of my own identity. But with Maria, there was a history, a shared life, and a love that, despite everything, was still very much alive. I knew I had to make a decision, not just for Maria or Nicholas, but for myself. I needed to understand what I truly desired, not just in fleeting moments of passion, but in the long arc of my life. The choice was mine, and it was time to confront the truth of who I was, what I wanted, and how I could live with the consequences of my actions. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of guilt and confusion. The days following were a blur of guilt, confusion, and a desperate attempt to act normal around Maria. I couldn't bring myself to tell her, fearing the destruction of our life together. Nicholas, on the other hand, seemed to take it in stride, suggesting we could explore this new aspect of my identity together. But every time I looked at Maria, her smile, her laughter, I felt like a fraud. One evening, Maria, sensing something was off, sat me down for a heart-to-heart. She asked if there was someone else, her voice trembling with fear. I couldn't lie, not to her face. "Maria," I began, my voice barely a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a drum of dread. I've been feeling confused about myself, about what I want, about who I am. Her eyes searched mine, a storm of emotions brewing behind them. "Confused how, Nathan?" she asked, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly. I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. "I've been exploring parts of myself that I've never shared with you. Feelings, desires, with Nicholas." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria's face paled, her eyes wide with shock and hurt. "You mean you've been with him?" she managed to say, her voice cracking. "Yes," I admitted, the weight of my confession crushing me. "It wasn't planned, Maria. It just happened. And now, I'm trying to understand what it means for me, for us." She stood up, pacing the room, her movements sharp with agitation. "And what does it mean, Nathan? Are you leaving me? Do you want to be with him?" I shook my head, feeling the tears well up. "I don't know, Maria. I love you, I truly do. But there's this part of me that's been locked away, and I'm trying to figure out if it's something I can ignore or if it's something I need to explore further." Maria stopped pacing, her back to me, her shoulders heaving with silent sobs. "I need time, Nathan. Time to process this. I love you, but I also need to know if I can live with this, with you exploring this side of yourself." The room felt colder, the distance between us palpable. "I understand," I said, my voice hollow. "Take all the time you need." The days that followed were torturous. Maria and I coexisted in our home like strangers, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I continued to meet with Nicholas, but our interactions were now shadowed by the reality of my situation. He was understanding, giving me space, but the thrill of our previous encounters was now tainted with the guilt of what I had done to Maria. I found myself at Nicholas's place one evening, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of our last encounter. "I'm sorry," I said, the words feeling inadequate. "I've hurt Maria, and I'm not sure how to fix this." Nicholas sat beside me, his hand on my shoulder, a gesture of comfort. "You're not alone in this, Nathan. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. But remember, you also need to be true to yourself." His words were a balm, yet they also stoked the fire of my internal conflict. I wanted to be true to myself, but at what cost? Could I really ask Maria to accept this part of me, especially after what had happened? Back home, Maria and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the space between us filled with the remnants of our once vibrant life. "I've been thinking," she started, her voice soft, "about us, about what you've told me. I want to understand, Nathan. I want to try, but I need to know if you're willing to work through this with me." Her willingness to try, despite the pain I had caused, was both a beacon of hope and a mirror reflecting my own turmoil. "I am," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I want to work through this, Maria. I want to understand myself better, but I also want to understand us, to see if there's a way we can both be true to ourselves and still be together." The tears in my eyes were not just for the pain I had caused, but for the love I still felt for Maria, a love that was now tangled with confusion and a newfound sense of self. I told her everything, from the initial attraction to Nicholas, to the nights we spent together, exploring desires that were both thrilling and terrifying in their intensity. The room was silent except for the ticking of the clock, each second stretching into an eternity. Maria's face went from confusion to shock, then to a heartbreaking sadness. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked out into the night, her back to me. "I need time," she whispered, her voice barely audible. That night, she packed a bag and left for her sister's place. The door closed with a finality that echoed through the empty apartment. The days without Maria were a stark contrast to the life we had built together. The silence was oppressive, the space too vast without her laughter, her warmth. I spent my time reflecting, trying to piece together what I truly wanted, what I could live with, and what I couldn't. I met with Nicholas, but our meetings were now different. The excitement was replaced by a somber understanding. He listened as I shared my turmoil, my guilt, and my love for Maria. "You've got to decide what's best for you, Nathan," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "And remember, whatever you choose, it's about your happiness, not just mine or Maria's." His words were a reminder of the complexity of human connections, the layers of emotions that bind us together. I realized that my journey wasn't just about exploring new desires, but about understanding the depth of my existing relationships. One evening, as the sun set, casting long shadows across our now too quiet apartment, I sat with a cup of coffee, the steam rising like my thoughts. I knew I had to make a decision, not just for Maria or Nicholas, but for myself. I needed to understand what I truly desired, not just in fleeting moments of passion, but in the long arc of my life. I called Maria, my heart racing. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice a mix of hope and fear. She agreed, and we met at a small cafe, neutral ground. Her eyes were still shadowed with hurt, but there was also a flicker of something else, perhaps hope, or maybe just the need for closure. "I've been thinking a lot, Maria," I started, my hands wrapped around the warm mug. "About us, about what I've done, and about what I want. I love you deeply, but I've also discovered parts of myself that I can't ignore. I need to explore this, but I also want to see if there's a way for us to navigate this together." Maria listened, her gaze steady on mine. "I've been thinking too, Nathan. I love you, but I also need to protect myself. If you need to explore, I can't stop you. But I need to know if there's room for me in this new version of you." The conversation was raw, filled with tears and moments of silence where words failed us. We talked about boundaries, about openness, about the possibility of redefining our relationship. It wasn't about giving up on us, but about understanding if there was a new us to be found. "I want to try, Nathan," Maria said, her voice firm yet vulnerable. "But we need to be honest, brutally so. We need to redefine what our marriage means, what love means to us now." The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain. I couldn't keep living in this limbo of guilt and confusion. We agreed to take it one day at a time, to communicate openly, and to explore this new terrain together, with the understanding that it might lead us to different places or back to each other in a new way. As I walked back to our apartment, the weight of the weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I sought therapy, trying to understand myself, my actions, and the implications for my future. Maria and I agreed to counseling, not to save our marriage, but to find a way to move forward, either together or apart. In the quiet of the therapist's office, I found myself unraveling layers of my identity I had never dared to touch before. The sessions were a mix of relief and pain as I dissected my feelings for Nicholas, my love for Maria, and the person I was becoming. Each session was like peeling back the skin of an onion, revealing more about myself than I had ever known. Maria and I sat side by side, yet the emotional distance between us was palpable. We talked about everything from our happiest moments to the night I crossed the line with Nicholas. The therapist guided us through exercises meant to rebuild trust, to understand each other's pain, and to explore if there was a path forward for us as a couple. In one session, Maria looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and determination. "I want to understand, Nathan. I want to know if this exploration of yours is something you need to do alone, or if there's a way for us to redefine what we have." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question. "I need to explore this, Maria, but I also want to see if there's a way for us to navigate this together. I love you, and I don't want to lose what we have." The therapist encouraged us to set boundaries, to communicate openly about our needs and fears. It was during these sessions that Maria and I decided to give each other space to grow, to understand, and possibly to heal. In the end, Maria decided she couldn't continue our relationship, but she expressed a willingness to remain friends, to support each other through this transition. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with tears and a gentle hug that spoke volumes of our shared history and the love that still existed, albeit in a different form. I moved out into a small studio apartment. It was a stark contrast to the home we had shared, but it felt right. Here, I could breathe, reflect, and truly explore my identity openly. The space was mine, filled with my records, my art, and the silence that allowed me to think. Nicholas and I continued to see each other, but it was clear our connection was more about my journey of self-discovery than a lasting relationship. He was a guide, a friend, someone who had walked this path before and could offer insights without judgment. Our times together were less about the thrill of new experiences and more about understanding the depth of my own desires and identity. Life was different now, filled with new challenges and a newfound honesty about who I was. I joined support groups, met others on similar journeys, and slowly, the guilt began to lift, replaced by a sense of self-acceptance. Maria and I found a new rhythm, one of mutual respect and understanding. We met for coffee, shared updates about our lives, and occasionally laughed about old times. The love we once shared had transformed into something else, something less romantic, but no less significant. It was a friendship built on years of shared experiences, now tempered by the reality of our new lives. As I look to the future, I see a path that's still unclear, but filled with potential. I've learned that life isn't about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions and being open to the answers, however unexpected they might be. I've started to date again, cautiously, exploring connections that resonate with this new version of myself. Each date, each interaction, is a step towards understanding what I truly want, not just in fleeting moments of passion, but in the long arc of my life. The future holds many possibilities. I might find love again, in forms I never anticipated. I might deepen friendships, like the one with Maria, that enrich my life in ways I hadn't imagined. Or I might continue this journey of self-discovery, learning more about Nathan, the person I am becoming. What I know for certain is that I'm no longer living in the shadows of my own secrets. I'm stepping into the... Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.